Hello viewers, welcome to this lecture on hydrobiology. Today we are going to look at the physical properties of water and their biological significance. As we know, the water molecule is actually made up of two atoms of hydrogen and an atom of oxygen, and basically it has a slight positive charge around the hydrogen atoms and a slight negative charge in the oxygen around the oxygen atom, which makes water to be a polar molecule. Now this property of water basically gives water some characteristics that actually has biological significance. First, we want to look at the solvent properties of water. Water is known to be a universal solvent basically because it's able to have so many solutes dissolved in it. It's able to dissolve so many solutes, so it's a universal solvent. And this is actually influenced by the fact that it has a slight negative charge near the oxygen atom and a slight positive charge near the hydrogen atoms, which basically enable it to form hydrogen bonds with other polar molecules. Now, what's the biological significance of this? The polarity of water basically enables it to have interaction or to react with so many substances to form bonds, and this enables it to transport nutrients and waste products within organisms. For example, blood, which is primarily water, carries vital substances throughout the body, and the plants also transport nutrients from one part to the other. And this is also very vital too for the transportation of water from the roots of the plant to the top of this very important of this plant. So basically the solvent property of water basically enables it to transport substances, nutrients, and other very vital and waste products from one part of the plant to another. Now, one other physical property of water is cohesion and adhesion. Cohesion and adhesion. Now, water molecules exhibit cohesion, that they tend to have a force of attraction between various molecules, water molecules, and they tend to adhere to other surfaces, which basically helps it to in various ways. So because of its good hydrogen bonds, the water tends to have serious cohesion and adhesion. So water molecules tend to cling to each other, that's cohesion, and they also cling to other surfaces, and that's adhesion. So they are cohesive and adhesive. Now let us look at the biological significance of this property of water, cohesion and adhesion. One of the biological significance of this property of water is plant transport. The combined effects of cohesion and adhesion in water molecules actually provide capillary action, enabling water to move up tall trees or even shrubs or grasses. Basically, when water molecule is dragged through a process known as transpiration, because they cling to each other. When one molecule of water is dragged up, it drags the other, and it adheres to the walls of the xylem vessels until the next pool occurs as a result of transpiration. So it helps in plant transport and enables water to move against gravity. Cohesion and adhesion also affects aquatic life. The surface tension created by cohesion allows small organisms like water striders to walk across water surfaces such as ponds or lakes without sinking. The third property of water I want to look at is the thermal properties of water. Now, water tends to have some properties that enables it to have biological significance, and those thermal properties include heat and high specific heat. The amount of heat required to raise the temperature of water surface is called high specific heat. Water's high value allows it to absorb significant heat before temperature increases. So the temperature of the water relatively resists changes in temperature, and that helps to support life. So the water doesn't become hot too quickly. It takes a long period of time to raise the temperature of water. Then water basically also have high heat of vaporization. The heat of vaporization basically refers to the energy needed to convert liquid water into vapor. Water has high heat of vaporization. That's why you need to heat the water for a long period of time before it can evaporate. Now, what's the biological significance of these thermal properties of water? One of them is thermal regulation. The high specific heat helps organisms, which are mostly water, maintain a stable internal temperature despite fluctuations in external environment. So basically, the thermal properties of water, particularly the high specific heat, helps organisms to carry out homeostasis, or what we call thermal regulation. One other biological significance of the thermal properties of water is evaporative cooling. As water evaporates from the body through transpiration or sweating in plants and sweating in animals, it carries away a large amount of heat, providing an effective cooling mechanism. So basically, when we sweat, basically it has a cooling effect, and that is actually enhanced by the vaporization of water. Then climate regulation. Large bodies of water like oceans absorb and store heat of the sun, whereby reducing global temperatures. So basically, that's one important thermal property or biological significance of the thermal property of water. One other physical property of water I want to look at is density. Water's density changes with temperature. So the density increases with temperature. So as the temperature reduces, density increases. So from top, usually the lighter water is usually hotter than the cooler water. That's why in thermal stratification, basically you have the warmer water forming the epithelium, followed by the metathelium, and you have the cooler water at the bottom. Now the density reduces as the water temperature declines from maybe about 28-27 degrees Celsius down to 4 degrees Celsius, and water has the highest density at 4 degrees Celsius or centigrade. Now beyond that density, beyond that temperature, lower than 4 degrees Celsius, the density of water tends to reduce. So density increases as the temperature reduces from higher temperatures to 4 degrees Celsius, and then when it's cooler than 4 degrees Celsius, the density now reduces. So basically, that has a very serious biological significance. And what's the biological significance of this? Now, the biological significance of this is triggered by the fact that when water becomes cooler than 4 degrees Celsius, it tends to expand. And this expansion and cooling eventually make the cooler water to float to the surface, and that's why you have ice floating on top of the on top of water. So when you put ice block in water, the ice floats. Basically, it's because the density has reduced. So ice block has lesser density than water, the liquid water. Now, how does that affect living organisms? What's the biological significance? Now, the increase in density with cooler temperatures actually make the cooler water to be at the bottom, allowing a warmer water to be at the surface, and enables organisms to survive. Now, in temperate regions during winter, when the temperature becomes cooler than 4 degrees Celsius, the water at the bottom, now that is lower than 4 degrees Celsius, now moves to the surface, forming an ice block to seal the surface of the water. It now serves as a buffer between the cooler atmosphere and the water, whereby providing a conducive environment for living organisms to survive at the bottom. So you have ice block covering the surface, but you have a warmer water at the bottom, and that enables fish and other aquatic organisms to survive even in extreme temperatures. So it has a very good biological significance, allowing living organisms to survive in winter. Now, one other physical property of water is transparency. Water is transparent to visible light. So light can penetrate the surface of the water. It allows light to pass through it, and this is also very observable in very shallow areas. Now, what's the biological significance of the transparency of water? The transparency of water enables light to penetrate, and this actually helps organisms, photosynthetic organisms, to utilize the sunlight to carry out photosynthesis. So the deeper the water, the less light that penetrates, and that actually affects the distribution of organisms. You mostly have the algae at the surface that utilize the sunlight for photosynthesis, and the other organisms exist at the darker bottom. So basically, the transparency of water enables photosynthetic organisms to utilize light. And also in some shallow regions, even some submerged plants can make use of the sunlight to carry out photosynthesis. So these are various physical properties and their various significances. Now we have looked at various physical properties, the solvent property of water, and basically it makes it to be a universal solvent and helps in transportation of nutrients and waste products. Then cohesion and adhesion, which we have said that makes water, cohesion means the attraction water molecules have for themselves, and adhesion means the attraction water has to other surfaces, and this helps basically in transportation of plants, and basically also affect aquatic plants. We have also looked at the density of water, and that it's very important basically in the survival of organisms in the temperate region. Then the transparency of water also helps the photosynthetic organisms to carry out photosynthesis for maximum productivity. Thanks a lot for watching this video. I'm Dr. Gijo. Harry. Keep watching more of my videos from my YouTube and TikTok channels.